Assalamu alaikum, dear students. It is nice to see you again. So let's start a new lesson. Before going to start your new lesson, let's have a flashback at your previous lesson. If you remember, we studied about the cell theory. Also, we studied about the microscopy. So in this video, we will follow these objectives: types of cells, and also about the structures and functions of organelles. So let's talk about it in details. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. In cell theory, we study that cell is the fundamental structural and functional unit of all living organisms. When we want to study the cell, at first we will face a common thing between different types of cells. It means different type of cells possess these important organelles. It doesn't matter which type of cell they are. The first, cell membrane, which surrounds the cell from outside and protects inside materials of the cell from outside. The second is cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a jelly-like fluid, which is like jelly-like substance, and all organs flatten it freely. The third one, the DNA. Here it is located inside the nucleus, which possesses genetic information. So now we will study about the structures and functions of organelles. These are the organelles of the cell. Before starting the organelles, you should know that organelle means little organ. So these are the little organ that you can find within a cell. These are specific according to their structure, and also they are specific according to their function. It means they provide important functions inside the cell to carry out metabolic reactions of the cell, also the livelihood functions that are carried out inside living organisms. So firstly, let's talk about the types of cells. Mainly there are two broad categories of cell types. One, eukaryotic cells, another is prokaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells are those cells which possess different type of organelles that also consist the nucleus. So they are mainly advanced cells, such as those that could be found inside the plants and also inside the animals. The second category of the cell are prokaryotic cells that could easily be found inside one cell, or mainly we can say that they are unicellular organisms. For example, the bacteria. They do not possess nucleus, also enclosed membrane organelles. Also, they possess the DNA, but it is not enclosed in nucleus. So let's start from outside the membrane of the cell. As we see, this is called plasma membrane. The plasma membrane possesses a special structure. According to its structure, its job is also specified. So we can categorize the entire functions of the cell membrane also, or a plasma membrane, into 1, 2, and 3 specific objectives. Firstly, if we want to understand a cell membrane, we can say that this is the outer membrane of the cell. It encloses the cell itself, also maintaining a specific condition for cellular functions. Second, it is selectively permeable. Selectively permeable means that the cell membrane or plasma membrane possess different type of structures, as you see within this picture. You will be familiar with these structures in next videos. So the selective permeability property is dependent on these structures. For example, the proteins that are embedded inside the cell membrane, also the glycoproteins and glycolipids, also the cholesterol and enzymes. Each of them are specified in order to carry out an important function. Therefore, the diffusion materials are selectively specified. It means they admit some materials to get inside the cell, and also they admit some important ions and materials to get outside of the cell. Another important thing that you should know about the cell membrane is this, that plays an important role in the entrance and exit of the substances. What does it mean? It means when you talk about the cell communication in cell theory, you may understand that a living organism is composed of different types of cells. So these different types carry out different functions. So most of the substances which are necessary for metabolic reactions inside the cell that are going to be carried out through a communication system. This communication system is called entrance and exit of the substances that are carried out by this selectively permeable membrane. Another difference that you can find inside the plant and animal cell is the cell wall. What does it mean? It means that plant cell possess two layers of membranes. One cell membrane, which is made up of the cellulose and lignin, and it is freely permeable, but it gives the cell, especially the plant cell, animal cell do not possess cell wall. So what is the function of cell wall? The function of cell wall could be taught as it is freely permeable. It means it admits any kind of substances that gets inside and outside of the cell, but by possessing the another membrane, for example plasma membrane, which is located inside the cell, so the plant cell controls the entrance and exit of the substances. Also, it gives a definite shape for cells. It prevents cell from bursting. It means when during osmosis the plant absorb more water, so this is the rigid form of the cell wall that prevents the cell wall, plant cell in order to not be burst and not break down. So plants are linked to neighboring cells. Yes, plant cells are in communication with each other through different structures that you see here. For example, the plasmodesmata, also plasma membrane, and also the cell wall. With the joint connection of the cell membrane, that is called plasmodesmata, there different type of substances are going to be communicated with different type of cells. Another thing that you see, this is called the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is an aqueous, it means watery material, varies from a fluid to jelly-like substance, which enables the organs of the cell to float freely inside the cell. The most important thing that you can find inside a eukaryotic cell, that is the nucleus. The nucleus itself could be found like a large organelle of the cell. So about anatomical face of the nucleus, we can say that it possesses different type of parts. For example, inside the nucleus you can find small things that are called nucleus. A nucleus is the place where ribosomes are going to be produced. Also, these spread out tangled structures that you see there are called chromatins. Chromatins are tangled form of DNA. But when the cell is ready to be divided, so the chromatins will exchange to another structure that is called chromosome. These are the pores that will help the nucleus in order to receive substances and also exit substances. Attached with the nucleus is endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum, or shortly ER. So the nucleus itself is covered with a nuclear envelope. Let's talk about its function. And the function of the nucleus, as you know, is to carry out DNA, the genetic materials that specifies what cell to do and how to do it by producing different type of proteins. So in the function of the nucleus, we can say that the substances that leave and enters the nucleus, they are important for metabolic reactions of the cell, so it affects the function of the nucleus also. Substances that leave the nucleus are mRNA or messenger RNA, and also the ribosomes that we will study in next slides. Substances that entering the nucleus are protein, nucleotide ATP, and also thyroid hormones. These are different type of macromolecules that are necessary for metabolic reactions of the cell. Also, nucleus makes ribosomes using its own DNA. Nucleus will make the ribosome using their own DNA. So let's talk about the ribosomes. When ribosomes are going to be produced inside the nucleus, it leaves the nucleus. So it could be thought that a nucleus can flat freely inside the cytoplasm. Also, it can attach with the endoplasmic reticulum. So the ER could be found into two different forms. One is called rough endoplasmic reticulum, which ribosome is attached with it. Also, there is a smooth endoplasmic reticulum that do not have attached ribosome with it. So what is the ribosome? The ribosome is the place where proteins are going to be synthesized. It means ribosomes possess a special function of making proteins. What about the endoplasmic reticulum, the rough one and the smooth one's function? So we can say that ER, or endoplasmic reticulum, is a continuous membrane system that forms a series of flattened sacs within the cytoplasm of eukaryotic cells. So what could be thought about the function of a smooth endoplasmic reticulum? About the function of endoplasmic reticulum, we can say that a smooth one especially lacks the ribosomes, but its function is to make lipids, steroids, cholesterol. Also, in reproductive systems, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is used to produce reproductive hormones like estrogen and testosterone. So mainly we can categorize or summarize the function of endoplasmic reticulum into synthesis, folding, modification, and transport of protein. Yes, we received our post office. What does it mean? Inside the cell there are a communication system. So this communication system is called post office. The communication function is carried out by Golgi apparatus, or sometimes called Golgi body. When the ribosomes emerge from the nucleus, for instance the endoplasmic reticulum, the rough one, and then it will emerge from endoplasmic reticulum inside different type of secretory vesicles that then this is the Golgi body that receives these proteins. The function of Golgi body is this, that it specifies the form of the proteins that could be used by another cells. So if to talk about the Golgi body, we can say that the cell's post office is called the Golgi body, this one. So it is involved in chemical processing like modifying, sorting, and packaging of proteins for secretion. Also, it is involved in transport of lipids around the cell, the creation of lysosomes. As we know, different type of proteins are going to be received by the Golgi body, so different type of proteins are going to be modified for their different functions and forms. What is lysosome? Lysosomes are garbage collectors of the cell. It means when the cell organelles exist or wound, so they should be replaced with another organelle in order to carry out metabolic functions inside that cell. So this is the function of the lysosomes, that possess digestive enzymes which helps the engulfed materials of the outer side, and also the exist or worn out organelles of the inside of the cell to digest it and exhale it outside of the cell. So they are called garbage collectors of the cell. They contain digestive enzymes. They digest excess or worn out organelles, food particles, and also engulf viruses and bacteria. What are mitochondria? Totally mitochondria are called energy house of the cell. It means this is the place where ATP is going to be produced during a process that is called cellular respiration. And mitochondria, the energy is provided for all functions of the cell. So those tissues that require more energy, they possess more mitochondria. So, in which the most important part of the cellular respiration occurs, ATP production. ATP production occurs inside the mitochondria. About its atypical phase, we can find different structures. For example, inside the membrane, we can inside the mitochondria, we can see that it is filled with two membranes, also the inner membrane and the outer membrane. It possesses the ribosomes, also their own DNA. Ribosomes and DNA means that it enables the mitochondria in order to self-replicate. So this structure is called cresta. Cresta is the unfamiliar shape of the inside membrane of the mitochondria. The mitochondria is enclosed by two lipid membranes. The cresta encloses the internal space known as the mitochondrial matrix. Also, mitochondrial DNA, mitochondrial RNA, mitochondrial ribosome, and a respiratory enzyme can be found. These things enables the mitochondria to self-replicate. In the eukaryotic cell, there are numerous mitochondria, and as I taught, cells that use more energy, such as muscle cells, they have more mitochondria. So, meanwhile, during function of the cell maintains its structure in order to stabilize its mechanical structure. Also, the functions that are going to be carried out inside the cell. The cell's structure is maintained through different type of proteins that are called cytoskeletons. Cyto means the cell, skeleton means skeletal system, as we possess the humans, animals, and also plants do not possess that. Only animals and human has. So cytoskeleton means the skeletal system of the cell. So it is made up of microtubules, microfilaments, and microfilaments, and intermediate filaments. Both are made up of proteins. Microtubules are formed by molecules of a protein called tubulin. Tubulins are these small tubes or bubbles that make up the tubulin, which is important to stabilize the structure of the cell. Microfilaments are made up of actin. This one is a microfilament that is made up of the actin. Each one is made up of actin subunit. Intermediate filaments are also made up of protein. These ones that are attached with each other. So the exact shape of the cell and the exact functions of the organelles are maintained according to cytoskeleton. What are the functions of cytoskeleton? We can categorize or summarize the total function of the cell with a function of the cytoskeleton. It means the cytoskeleton is responsible for maintaining of the neural shape of the cell, also the transport of the substances across the cell, and the movement of organelle. Different type of unicellular organisms move in order to possess a food material, also to prepare itself to catch the food, and also they use the cytoskeleton to move from one place to another place when they are invaded by another unicellular. The plasma membrane projection that engulf the external material to be interiorized and attacked by the cell. There we will study about different communications of the cell. For example, the bulk transport that we will study, they will categorize into phagocytosis, endocytosis. In simple words, we will study about the drinking and eating of the cell. Eating and drinking of the cell is stabilized by cytoskeleton. It means the engulfing of the materials, also the extincting of the materials. That is controlled by the cytoskeleton. About the cell vacuoles. Cell vacuoles are a small sac-like structure Mainly, it stores different type of materials. And so, for example, in plant cells, we know that vacuoles store water. So they like storage bubble found in cells. Both animal and plant cells possess, but in animal cells you can find the vacuoles in smaller structures. In plants you may find like a central vacuole or large vacuole. They store food and nutrients a cell might need to survive, even store waste products, so the rest of the cell is protected from contamination. Yes, it is important to restore feeding materials, also waste materials, and then expel it out of the cell. The osmotic balance of the intracellular space, as I mentioned, when the cell is facing solution, such a solution in which osmotic pressure is high, so the plant cell will shrink. In this case, the water which is stored inside the vacuole will be lost. But when it faces another kind of solution which possesses different type of osmotic pressure, it will absorb more water, and this is the second layer that is called cell wall, will help the plant not to burst. And about important organelle of the cell that you should know, they are called centrioles. And the question arises like this: which cell organelle participate in cell division and also in formation of the cilia and flagella in the cell? As you see this picture, this is during cell division, when chromatins are condensed into chromosome structures, and these are the centrioles that gets their cell from B side of the nucleus into two polars, and they produce aster microtubules in order to attach with the center of the chromosomes and split one cell into two cells. Most of organelles possess some unique structures. For example, the cilia and flagella. As you see in this bacteria, this is called flagella. Flagella is a kind of small tail which helps the structure of the organism in order to prepare itself. Also the cilia, which are smaller than flagella, they help the organism to catch and move. The only cell inside of the human or the sponge that possess flagella. Thank you, dear students. Now we received the final slide, so this was your lesson. If you possess any kind of question, please inform us. Thank you so much. See you on the next video.